Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to talk about something a little bit different, and that is podcasts. If you're new here, you may not know that I've been on a little bit of a level up journey, and I've been really exploring what makes me tick, how I want to show up in the world, and what that looks like in the day-to-day. And with that, I've noticed that when people are on a little bit of a level up journey, there's usually a few things that tend to be the same or consistent across the board. And what I've noticed for myself is I've really focused in on wanting to be a little bit more feminine, a little bit more elegant. I've wanted to look at increasing our personal wealth, and I've wanted to start experiencing better things from life, not necessarily more things from life, but better things from life. I was saying that I thought I would talk to you today about some of the podcasts that I've been listening to that I really feel have helped nurture that. And also it almost feels like when I'm going about my day-to-day that I have somebody in my ear that understands where I'm at, and it kind of makes the journey not feel as lonesome. So with that, let's get into today's video. If you haven't subscribed, I would be so honored if you did. Let's talk about some podcasts. So my love for podcasts actually started about 10 years ago when I was doing lash extensions, and I just could not listen to the same 5 songs that were on the radio over and over again. So I ended up putting my headphones in when my clients would fall asleep during their appointments. And the first podcast I listened to was called The Art of Charm. And looking back on it now, I wouldn't be surprised if that was one of the things that started me off on a little bit of this femininity journey and this elegance journey. Because on The Art of Charm, they were primarily talking to men about how they can be a little bit more masculine and find the courage to go take on the world. Believe it or not, sometimes men have issues showing up in the ways that they want to show up to. Now with that, one of the podcasts that I've been absolutely loving, which is going to come as no surprise, so let's get this off the board, is Anna Bay's podcast, the School of Affluence podcast. Now, although Anna doesn't post that consistently, I do think that you really get a little bit more of a glimpse into her life and what it looks like in the day-to-day of being an elegant woman, being an elite woman, etc. And I think why I've enjoyed this podcast is that if you listen to some of the things that Anna says in these podcasts, it's a little bit more intimate, and you see that actually things don't always go according to plan. There are going to be hiccups and bumps in the road. So have grace with yourself when you are on a level up journey. And I also feel like when I listen to her podcast, because she's not somebody that does share a lot about her personal life, you almost feel like you are included in the elite group, the elite friend circle that you're wanting to immerse yourself in. Obviously, that is probably why a lot of people have joined her A-list app. For me, it's just not a good time in my life to be incorporating any elements of that, but I totally understand why people have. If you haven't checked out Anna's podcast, there should be a few episodes for you to binge on, and let's just hope that she brings it back. Now, the next podcast that I want to speak about is Dave Ramsey's podcast. Now, the challenging part about Dave Ramsey's podcast is he puts out so many episodes, and if you're not familiar with who Dave Ramsey is, he puts out podcasts. He has a book. We have one of the books downstairs. And it's all about getting rid of debt and then making or creating more wealth. And so we are just in the process of grasping the concept and implementing it. But I know so many of my friends who have found success by following his system. Now, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be the system for us that brings the most harmony into our home, but I definitely think that there are elements to his system. I believe they're called baby steps. I do believe that there are elements to his system that we can implement in our home that will help us on our generating wealth journey. Now, the next podcast that I want to speak to, I'm sure if you have been anywhere on the internet and have searched femininity, you have come across the Simple Sophisticate podcast or content. Now, I don't know much about the host of the podcast. I can't even pull what her name is right now. I feel like it's Kate. but then maybe it's not. But I love her podcast. I think the reason why it's not sticking in my brain is that I believe she only puts out a podcast once a month. I have an episode for this month to listen to right after I finish filming today. But I love how she breaks down her episodes into some of the things that she's enjoying in her day-to-day. From what I understand, she's a teacher and she's just moving into content creation full-time, or she's coming out with a course that's allowing her to not be a teacher. I could totally be wrong. But any recommendation that I have taken from her has been amazing. So if you are looking at refining yourself, if you're looking at living a little bit more of a sophisticated life, I definitely would check out the Simple Sophisticate podcast. Now, last but not least, the podcast that I want to talk about the most is actually called Homemaker Chic. And if you are on YouTube after this video, you're obviously on YouTube if you're watching this video, but if you end this video and head over to either the Elliott Homestead or Parisian Farm Girl, you will see the two hosts of this podcast. Now, the main reason of why I love this podcast is they really speak to the element of homemaking. And I do feel that if you are on a feminine journey, even a level up journey, you will probably live a little bit more of a traditional lifestyle. And if you don't, that's totally okay. But there will be elements to people that watch these videos, I'm sure of it, that like the concept of being a homemaker. Now, I'm a homemaker, but we're all homemakers at the end of the day. But I'm not a traditional one, even though I do have traditional values. I like bringing money into my home. I'm a working homemaker, but I do still have traditional values. And it's been really interesting to see and hear these ladies walk that out and bring people onto their podcast who maybe do homemaking in a little bit of a different way and not be disrespectful. I think that they share how they homemake, they share why they homemake in the way that they do, but they are open to other people speaking to the ways that they homemake as well. And I think that there's so much power in that. And there's, for me personally, just being in a new country, taking care of the home, and sometimes not feeling seen. I don't need a round of applause when I've cleaned something, that's for sure. But I think sometimes it's very easy to overlook how much time it takes for these tasks, especially if you aren't employing somebody else to do it for you. So listening to this podcast just brings me such a warm feeling, because I do feel that I am going about my day with my friends in my ears and someone else that knows the challenges that I'm walking through in the day-to-day. Anyways, my friends, that is it for this video. Are you listening to any podcasts? I actually did a huge cull of the podcast that I was listening to, because if you saw my episode or my video, with my hypnotherapist, you would have heard her say how, your brain, your primitive part of your brain is always listening. And I love true crime. But I don't think it was doing me many favors to be listening to a ton of true crime podcasts when I'm trying to bring my stress levels down. Furthermore, I just found certain podcasts were putting out so many episodes that my feed was getting clogged. And instead of, doing some work, I would just want to listen to one more episode. Kind of like how you just want to watch one more episode when you're watching Netflix. So I did do a huge cull, but what are some of the podcasts that you listen to? How do you feel like it is enriching your life? I will tell you who I would love to hear a podcast from. That would be Nicholas Fairford. If you haven't checked out his channel, it is amazing. But do let me know who you're loving listening to, and maybe I'll do a little bit of a taste test and then see if it's somebody that I can listen to from time to time too. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye.